Howdy again everyone, and today I'm presenting you with a very exciting Sony portrait lens, the FE 135mm f1.8 G Master. It's for their E-mount mirrorless cameras, full frame or APS-C. It costs a huge $2,000 or around £1,600 in the UK. You get a lot of lens for your money though, as you're about to see. 135mm on full frame is a perfect classic focal length for portrait pictures, giving you a nice tight image that won't distort your subject's facial features and a well compressed background. f1.8 is very bright for a telephoto lens of this kind. That means the lens is extra big and pricey, but it also leads to some very deeply out of focus backgrounds in your pictures. This optic really is a joy to work with, and it would also be excellent for event photography. f1.8 may be an unusually fast aperture for a 135mm lens, but this Sony lens does have a direct competitor, the E-mount version of Sigma's 135mm f1.8 Art lens. I'll be looking at how they compare a bit later in the review, in case you are wondering. Let's look at build quality first though. Unlike the Zeiss branded lenses on a Sony system, this thing is made of plastic, but it feels nice and solid really. It weighs just under a kilogram and feels a bit front heavy to hold, so it will balance better on a slightly bigger camera. It's based on a metal lens mount with a slight but still present weather sealing gasket. The body of the lens also has two focus hold buttons and switches for auto or manual focusing. Next comes the aperture ring. It can be toggled between clicking at every third of a stop, which is satisfying for stills photographers, or having a smooth action instead by means of a little switch. That's a brilliant system. When shooting in video mode, that smooth aperture ring leaves you with beautiful looking aperture changes, as you can see here. You don't have to use the aperture ring at all if you don't want to, just leave it set to A mode and you can control the aperture through your camera. The manual focus ring is rubberized and turns very smoothly and responsively. The lens zooms in rather a lot as you focus more closely to your subject. That can be annoying for video makers. The lens's autofocus motor works silently, accurately and fairly quickly too, as you can see here. Nice. It does of course fully cooperate with your camera's eye autofocus mode. The lens comes with the usual caps and a deep hood. Its filter thread size is a large 82mm wide, and it doesn't have its own image stabilization system. Overall though, the lens's excellent build quality is in keeping with its high price. It handles like a dream. Let's move on and look at image quality then. I'm testing it out firstly on a full frame camera, my 42MP Sony A7R II. Straight from f1.8, image quality in the middle is absolutely perfect, razor sharp with excellent contrast. And the corners, well, that really is pretty incredible. Although they're just a tiny bit softer than the middle, they still look amazing. They stay pretty much exactly as sharp as you stop the lens down. For example, here's f4 and f8. It's only at f16 that a little softness begins to emerge due to the effect of diffraction. Still, what a mind-blowing performance. The entire image frame is razor sharp at any aperture, making this easily one of the sharpest lenses I've ever tested. Now let's try it out on an APS-C camera, my little 24MP Sony A5100. It's essentially the same performance here, razor sharp in the middle, again, straight from f1.8, and excellent in the corners too. The corners stayed this sharp down to f2.8, although at f4 there's another tiny little improvement. They stay this sharp down to f11, so again a simply incredible performance here. Now let's look at distortion and vignetting on a full frame camera. These images are taken without in-camera corrections. The lens projects a very mild pincushion distortion. It's barely noticeable and if anything will make your subject look a little thinner. The corners are a bit dark at f1.8 though. Stop down to f2.8 to see them brighten up. This lens can focus as closely as 70cm to your subject. That's pretty good really, for pictures of smaller subjects. Close-up image quality sees just a slight reduction in sharpness and contrast, which slightly improves when stopped down to f2.8 and f4. Still not a bad performance at all. Now let's see how the lens performs against bright lights. Bright lights do cause some glaring and flaring, but only when they're directly in your image frame, so it's about an average performance there. Next, Bokeh. Soft out-of-focus backgrounds are obviously of prime importance to this lens. Thankfully, as you can see, those backgrounds look absolutely beautiful. There are no serious problems here at all. And finally, something related to bokeh is longitudinal chromatic aberration. Here at f1.8, you can see only a moderate amount of colour fringing on bokeh highlights around the plane of focus. Stop down to f2.8 and it's greatly reduced, and at f4 it's almost gone. So overall, this Sony lens is a bit of a dream come true really. It's a majestic block of optical excellence. You have to pay a lot of money for it though, but it will perform for you absolutely unquestionably. As I mentioned, this G Master lens has a competitor on the market, Sigma's special E-mount version of their 135mm f1.8 Art lens, so let's make a quick comparison. The Sony lens is rather a lot more expensive than the Sigma, but it does enjoy a few advantages over its competitor. The most obvious difference is in size. The Sigma lens is enormous and very heavy, the Sony lens much more compact and easier to handle. Remember though, the Sigma lens is technically a digital SLR lens with a built-in adapter, which is one of the main reasons for its heftier size. The Sony lens is made of plastic, that makes it much lighter, but admittedly the build quality of the Sigma lens does feel much tougher and more solid in the hand. The autofocus on the Sony lens uses a stepping motor, which is a little quieter and more efficient than on the Sigma lens, a little bit faster as well. The Sony lens has extra buttons and controls, and its clever aperture ring is particularly desirable, especially for video makers. It can also focus down a little closer than the Sigma lens can. In terms of optics, the two lenses are essentially as good as each other. Both offer absolutely stellar picture quality across the entire image frame straight from f1.8. Judging by these images, the Sigma lens might just about have a tiny, barely conceivable advantage in corner image quality at f1.8, but really when you're looking this close, you're within a margin of error for sample variation. For all intents and purposes, both lenses offer absolutely incredible image quality in just about all areas. So ultimately, if you're going for the Sony lens, you're paying rather a lot extra for those advantages in build quality and particularly for its smaller size. That's quite a price to pay, but for some people that's exactly what they need, or just want. For many though, the saving to be had with the equally sharp Sigma lens might tip them over in that direction. Whatever you choose though, the Sony 135mm f1.8 G Master really is a flagship lens for the system, and despite its price tag, it comes highly recommended.